A Life After April. Chapter 5. What the Body Remembers. Written by Gabriel Ndayishimiye. I once believed I was meant to be a nurse, as if destiny had laid out a path too obvious to question. But fate does not ask what we want. It does not make space for our quiet dreams. It only waits for the moment when we learn that inevitability is a lie. This was a fact, like knowing I was left-handed, or that I preferred the sharp bite of winter air over the thick, syrupy heat of summer. Nursing felt inevitable, a shape I had always been meant to step into, so I left for Sarnia, about 100 kilometers away from home, to see if I could live inside that inevitability, to test the limits of my own independence. Certainty, inevitability, is fragile, something we hold on to until the world forces its hands around it and crushes it into dust. It does not protect us, does not shield us from the weight of choices we never wanted to make. It folds under the pressure of circumstance, dissolving into something unrecognizable, something we no longer have the power to claim as our own. That night, the one I no longer name, the one already laid bare in the last chapter, dismantled everything I thought I knew. It fractured my sense of purpose, made my future uninhabitable, turned certainty into something cruel and mocking. The shape of my dreams became jagged, something I could no longer fit inside. I could not return to my classes, could not bear the weight of a profession that demanded I care for others when I felt broken myself. So I left. My father did not understand. He barely reacted to my departure from nursing school. There were no expectations to be shattered, no dreams of mine he had carried as his own. He had never truly invested in me, not in the way fathers are supposed to. "After everything I've done for you," he said, but his voice lacked the weight of true disappointment, more perfunctory than pained. There was no real anger, no sense of loss, just an acknowledgement of something he had always suspected. I was not worth the investment, and now he had proof. But what else was there? Was it relief that he no longer had to feign pride in me? A grim satisfaction that I had proven him right all along? Or did some small, unspoken part of him hesitate, caught between the satisfaction of my failure and the burden of acknowledging that I had never truly belonged to him in the first place? He had never liked me, not really. I was an obligation, a duty fulfilled, a burden dressed up as responsibility. My choices did not disappoint him. They merely confirmed what he had always believed, that I was not, and never would be, the daughter he wanted. My mother was quieter in her grief, her sorrow leaking through in sighs, in the way she avoided my gaze. Her silence was not indifferent but resigned, as if she understood more than she could bear to say, the weight of trauma that settles into the body like a second skeleton, the cost of silence that erodes relationships, the necessity of resilience when survival is the only choice left. My aunt, ever the bridge between generations, would sometimes place a hand on my back, firm and grounding, as if willing strength into me without words. "You are still here," she would whisper, "and that means something." Her sorrow leaking through in sighs, in the way she avoided my gaze. My aunt would sometimes place a hand on my back, firm and grounding, as if willing strength into me without words. My sister held my hand at night when I couldn't sleep, but she never spoke of it. No one did. My body refused to forget. I made the decision alone, though the weight of it was carried in secret by those who knew: my mother, my father, my sister, my aunt, and uncle. Ben did not. It became a phantom between us, a silence that neither of us ever thought to interrogate. He had been excited for me to become a nurse. He had never understood why I left, but he did not press. And he never knew about the abortion, never knew that I had rewritten our future before it had even begun. He died, after 30 years of our marriage, believing in the version of me he had always known, the version I had let him see. But the silence shaped me, carved itself into my body like an old wound. It made me cautious in ways I could not name, hesitant in my joys, distant in my griefs. It taught me how to carry burdens alone, how to shrink my truths down until they were small enough to fit into the spaces between words. Another betrayal, though this one was my body's. I had tried to pretend that night had not happened, but my body remembered. My body always remembered. Ben and I built our house together, but a house is not a home, and permanence is never what it seems. We started with an apartment, a transitory space where the walls were thin and the future still seemed fluid, shifting between possibility and inevitability. We lived there for a couple of years, long enough to know that we needed something more stable, or at least the illusion of it. In 1975, we had our first house, a real one, with walls we painted and rooms that held our silences as much as our laughter. And then, in 1985, we built again, because we had learned that permanence was only a word, not a promise. Permanence was the great lie, a whisper in the dark we teach ourselves to believe, a contract written in vanishing ink. It was never mine to hold, never meant to last. It reassembled itself in ways I could not predict, turning solid ground into something that trembled beneath me, something that threatened to give way. I had seen walls crumble, seen homes become husks of what they once were. A house is not a sanctuary. It is a vessel for the lives lived inside it, for the ghosts we invite and the ones we try to forget. And silence, I knew, was heavier than stone, more enduring than any foundation. It settled into the cracks, settled into the empty corners of our conversations, a weight pressing against every unspoken word, replacing tenderness with distance, understanding with the ache of absence. Love is a fragile architecture, a house made of borrowed time. It settles into the structures we create, into the walls we paint, into the beds we share, whispering promises of permanence, even as it prepares to slip away. It is the silence in a room where two people have loved each other, but never truly known each other. It is the illusion that foundation means safety, when in truth, the weight of what is unsaid can bring even the strongest structure down. It is wanting to be a nurse until the world reminds you that your body is not your own. It is a father's indifference, a mother's quiet sorrow, an inheritance of restraint passed down like an heirloom. It is an abortion, a secret kept in the marrow, something carried in the body long after it is gone. It is the shape of a house built twice, the way hands know how to rebuild what has already been lost. And in the end, there is only the leaving, the knowing that we spend our lives clutching at things that were never ours to hold. Love, safety, belonging. All constructs, all illusions, all shadows cast by hands that never stay long enough to be caught. We name things permanent because we cannot bear to name them fleeting. But permanence does not exist, and the moment we believe it does, it is already gone.